Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting for today. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. This is our final meeting of 2023. So here's our agenda for today. From 8:30 to 8:45 or so, it's our welcome and general business. We also have a section for member announcements. So if you have an announcement of a job posting or something that's related to NetSuite, that'll be your opportunity to announce that to everybody participating today. Then we'll hear from our SuiteApp sponsor today, Merchant E, for about 10 minutes. And then after that will be our main presentation, which is cash management and a lot of different topics that relate to cash management in NetSuite. I'll show you a list of those topics here in just a moment. That'll be presented by various members of our board of directors. After that, we'll have a SuiteWorld recap and then our open forum. In our open forum session, that gives you the opportunity to ask any question that you have. There's everybody here can pitch in and help answer that question, or if you have a question about a specific problem that you have or a module that you want to implement and you want feedback on it or advice or something like that, that's the time to do that. So there's no topics that are not appropriate for that part of the meeting. So here's our agenda for the meeting topics today. Our primary discussion is going to be on cash management. So the first part of that will be NetSuite transactions that deal with cash. We'll hear from Dana Larson on that. After that will be Cash 360 from Margie Komninos. And then I will talk about Payment Link and Dunning. And then we'll hear from Mike Kachline on Lockbox, ACH, and EFT, and then also credit card processing. So that'll be the main presentation today. So membership to the user group, membership is free. You register at RMNSUG.org. And once you register, that guarantees that you get notifications of upcoming meetings and events. We have meetings every other month starting in January. And then we also have started doing happy hours. We're going to try and do those quarterly. They're going to be here in the Denver metro area. And we try and do those in various parts of the town, northwest or south or whatever. And that's a great time to kind of meet up and network and maybe meet new people or see people you haven't seen in a long time. Since we're doing our meetings fully remote, we want to have that networking opportunity. Once you're a member, you also get access to our LinkedIn forum. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then, so if you're not a member, please go sign up today. So where you can find us, our website, RMNSUG.org. We also have a YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube and search RMNSUG. And we have a LinkedIn forum. Our LinkedIn forum is this weird string, groups/5099096. You can just go to LinkedIn and search for Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group, and you'll find our LinkedIn forum if you haven't been there already. So I just want to take a moment and I'm going to share with you, I'm going to show you our website because we get a lot of questions about our website. And so here's our site. We do record and post all of our previous meetings. And if you go to our website, it's under posts. I know we should probably change that. It's not that intuitive, but basically you go to the posts and then you can see all of the meetings that we've done. We have content dating all the way back to May of 2013, although I think we just formally started recording our meetings in 2015. So I think the previous ones here are like our tips and tricks and stuff like that. But if you want to find a topic that we've done in the past, or if you just want to find out if we've done something in the past, you can just do a search. Saved searches are always a popular topic. So we've done save search. We did them earlier this year. We've done save sublists with save searches. So we've done a lot around save searches. And so if you just want to learn more, you can go in here and find information on pretty much any topic that you might want to know about in NetSuite. So I'm going to switch back here.
Hey, Cory.
And I just had, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just want to add a note on the LinkedIn. So for the those of you who would like to join our LinkedIn group, please make sure you first sign up as a member of RMNSUG, because we only let RMNSUG members sign up into our LinkedIn group.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Mike. And I'll just also add that the reason that we do that is so that LinkedIn forum doesn't become a big spammy place. And so, it's for members of the group. We limit who can post in that group. So there's not, companies can't just come in and post whatever they're selling, through the user group. It's really intended to support each other, questions and answers. And that's why we do require that you become a member. And again, membership is free. All you have to do is go to our website and sign up and give us like your email and your name. And that's membership. But yeah, that's why we do it on our LinkedIn forum like that.
I want to add one other point here with membership. I know that both of our sponsors today, our consulting sponsor and our SuiteApp sponsor, both have a raffle. And just FYI, in order to win, to be recognized as a winner of the raffle, you must be a member. So we get a list of names that are potentials with the random drawing, and then we just go through and go whether they're a member or not. So one more reason to join.
Yep, that's a great point too. Thanks, Margie. So we will be posting the links for the raffles here. So if you're interested in signing up for the raffles and you're not a member yet, you have a chance to go do that right now. So this is our 15-year anniversary of the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. We are the very first NetSuite user group in the country, and therefore the oldest, and we're also the largest user group in the country. And so happy anniversary to the user group. This photo here, so this is Margie Komninos. She was just now speaking, and she was one of the founding members 15 years ago. And Margie, I believe this cake was from the very first meeting that you did. Is that right?
That is correct. And it was from, was it Whole Foods?
Okay, good memory. So yeah, so happy anniversary to the user group. This has been such a great experience for me being a part of the user group. And Margie, I'm going to go ahead and if you want to say a few words about your experience and time on the board.
Oh, I just wanted to I appreciate everybody continuing to help this group grow. And we have an amazing, as I'm sure Cory will mention, an amazing board of directors. And if you're ever interested in joining the board, please reach out. They often say that volunteering and managing volunteers is like herding cats, but this is not the case with the incredible volunteers on our board. And it really is, we don't get anything back from it except ability to share and learn from others. But I did want to thank our Cory Anderson for stepping up to be president. I don't know how many years ago that was that you've been president, Cory. I don't know if it's 4 or 5 years now, but really appreciate it. It's not an easy job when you're working full time additionally, and you have a family to take this on and be president. So, and to be the moderator each time. So Cory, thank you very much. And of course, to all the other board members, and I'll pass it back to you, Cory. That was the main thing. I just wanted to thank you.
Thanks, Margie. I appreciate it. It's been almost 6 years that I've been president of the group, but I've been a member of the group since 2014. So that's almost 11 years at this point. Actually, no, I'm sorry, that would be 9 years at this point. And so also thank you, Margie, for starting this user group and being part of it for so long and making sure that it survives. And everything that you've done, we wouldn't be here without you for sure. So thank you for everything that you've done for this user group. So Margie, that's Margie right there in the middle. She's from Plant Scan Corporation. She's our sponsorship and member chair. Then we have our communications chair, Mike Kachline from Vertifor. Mike has been on the board since 2018. Then we have our speaker chair, Peggy Evleth from RSM US. She's been on the board since 2019. And then Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting is our treasurer. She's been a part of the user group since 2014. And I think I met Dana through the user group, and we've worked together a lot since then. So thank you, Dana, for everything that we've been through together. And Dana did leave the board just for a short amount of time and then came back to the board. So I didn't put that in there, but you've been part of the user group for a very long time as well. So thank you.
Just couldn't keep me away, could you?
That's right. All right. So we'll move on. At this point, let's talk about member announcements. So if you have any announcements, please feel free to unmute yourself and make that announcement. Maybe it's a job posting, or if you're looking for a job, something in that realm related to NetSuite, or a company that uses NetSuite. Maybe there's an accounting role, whatever. So I'll give you a minute to think about that. You can post them in the chat window. If you don't, you can just post them in the chat window. I'll read them. And then you can also post them on our LinkedIn forum if you'd like. So I'll just pause for a moment. Any announcements? Going once. Announcements, member announcements going twice. If you think about it later on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have one on chat here. Crafted ERP
Oh, okay.
is hiring.
Okay, Crafted ERP looking for a sales director. Looking for the posting now. Christy, yeah, that would be great if you want to post the link to that in the chat window. That'd be great.
Sure.
All righty, anybody else? All right, I'll move on. If you think of something later on, you can post it in the chat window. Also, you can go to our LinkedIn forum and post it there. So evaluations, we do send out evaluations. It'll be sent out a little bit later today. Please take a few moments to let us know how we're doing. We do read and act on the feedback from those evaluations. One of the most important things is our meeting topics. So if there's any specific topics that you want to learn about or hear more about, please use the evaluation to let us know what you'd like to hear. Then as a reminder, please use the same email to RSVP as the email that you received this invite. We try to maintain individual member records. If you received an invite to the meeting with different email addresses, you can email rsvp@rmnsug.org to have the extra email addresses inactivated. And at that time, please provide the company name and emails that should be inactivated. We use NetSuite as a production NetSuite account to run the user group. And so you can imagine if we have duplicate customer records or member records, it's hard for us to kind of maintain that. We try to keep that as clean as possible. If you don't want to do that and you just want to get multiple emails from us all the time, then that's fine too. So meeting sponsorship, membership to the user group is free, as I mentioned. However, the cost of meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship, our SuiteApp sponsors and consulting sponsors. SuiteApp sponsors must be available through SuiteApp.com, and consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. If you or your company is interested in learning more about sponsorship, you can go to rmnsug.org/sponsorship. CPE credits. This is something we've been working on. We lost them a little bit earlier this year. The firm that was helping support those decided not to do it anymore. We are planning on being able to offer CPE credits starting again in January in collaboration with RSM. So thank you in advance, RSM, for helping us offer the CPE credits. I know that that's a valuable offering to the user group, and we usually get a lot of folks that want those CPE credits. So that's a plan, not guaranteed, just saying we're planning on it. So hopefully we'll be able to get that started in January. So here's our upcoming meetings. Next January, reporting in NetSuite. Not quite sure yet. That could be reports or saved searches, maybe Suite Analytics workbooks, but it'll be something in that realm. Then in March is our order to cash meeting. In May, we'll talk about workflows. July next year, we're going to go back to the basics, NetSuite Basics or NetSuite 101. And then in September, we'll have our customizing NetSuite meeting. And the customizing NetSuite is, custom records, custom forms, lists, fields, all of that stuff. To kind of go through all of the customization capabilities. So I'd like to take a minute to say thank you to our consulting sponsor. Our consulting sponsor today is Salora ERP. and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about them. Hang on just a moment here. So Salora ERP is a trusted NetSuite Alliance partner specializing in NetSuite sales, expert implementations, and delivering proven business solutions within the NetSuite ecosystem. Our boutique size and dedicated, our boutique size team is dedicated to providing the hands-on attention your implementation or consultation requires. Our deep expertise empowers us to customize NetSuite to precisely match your business's unique needs. We foster close collaboration with our clients and partners to design and refine business processes, establish robust business logic, and conquer the most complex challenges that NetSuite presents. For instance, we've developed innovative solutions like our Dunning Plus SuiteLit, designed to streamline and automate the process of collecting outstanding invoices within NetSuite. If you have any inquiries or are keen to discover more about how Salora ERP can assist you, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're here to help. So again, thank you, Salora ERP, for sponsoring our user group today. And Salora does have a raffle. If that's not in the LinkedIn or in the chat window, I'll go ahead and post that now. I have the raffle URL here.
I think it's the very first post. So
okay,
and there it is.
All right, I just posted it again. And so thanks again, Salora. If you haven't signed up for the raffle, please go do so there.
Thank you.
And then,
appreciate you all.
Absolutely. And then I'd also like to say thank you to our SuiteApp sponsor today. Our SuiteApp sponsor is Merchant E. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy Collins from Merchant E to let him tell you about what Merchant E can do for you. So Jeremy, I'll stop sharing and you can take it over from here. And I'll before I go, I'll also mention Merchant E has a raffle, and that is in the chat window as well.
All right. Thank you, Cory, and good morning, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Jeremy Collins with Merchant E. And, looking at some of those announcements where the user group is celebrating 15 years, I think I first attended the Rocky Mountain user group in 2010. I live in Salt Lake and have been involved with NetSuite since 2010. And I remember attending one of the meetings in 2010. So it's been a great user group, and thank you for allowing us to sponsor this meeting. So if you're not familiar with Merchant E, Merchant E is a long-standing SuiteApp partner. We manage an embedded payment solution inside of NetSuite, meaning that we allow you to accept credit card payments, ACH payments. We have reconciliation features. We can also offer recurring payments. We support NetSuite's PayLink, as well as provide our own PayLink so that you can put a link on invoices, sales orders, statements, and allow your customers to make payments through that link. We've also recently added the support of Apple Pay and Google Pay. So for those that want to be able to make mobile payments and accept them via digital wallet, we have that capability as well. All right. So just a little bit more on the history. We have roughly 1,400 NetSuite clients that utilize the Merchant E solution today. As I mentioned, it's a full stack payment platform, but we control the process as both an acquirer and processor, meaning that as an embedded solution, you never have to leave NetSuite to accept the payment, while at the same time, because we're the processor, that payment's being processed and settled directly through the same organization as well. So we can process and settle and make sure that your funds are there, but it also allows us to control pricing to get you the best possible price when dealing with accepting credit card and ACH payments. These are just some of the NetSuite clients that utilize the Merchant E solution, just to give you an idea of who we work with, and we're across the board in every vertical. And, just going back to why the customers choose us, again, we're saving time with the automation being an embedded solution. We have 20 plus years of fintech experience. The company started, as I mentioned, in NetSuite, actually started working when NetSuite was still NetLedger. And so we've been with NetSuite the entire time. Again, it's an end-to-end acquiring system. We offer 24-hour support, as well as the PCI compliance is at our core. let's see. The process, because it's fully embedded, really easy. We add fields into your NetSuite account, and then also allow you to, like I mentioned, reconcile those payments as they come in. The stability uptime on our solution is ranked at 99.9%. And then we're the only end-to-end acquirer with cloud-based backend, just to reiterate that point. The main reason is wherever you engage your customers, we have a solution. So whether it's hosted payments, mobile acceptance, as I mentioned, we also offer level 2 and level 3 optimization, again, getting you better rates. We have EMV acceptance. So if you have a storefront and need a terminal, we can support terminals and the point of sale system, NetSuite, Suite Commerce, whatever payment type you're in need of, Merchant E has the ability to accept and process through NetSuite. Just some of the certification and compliance, a little bit more, again, about the company. Security is forefront of what we do, understanding that we're accepting payments or allowing you to accept payments. We take security very seriously. And so we make sure that the PCI compliance and SOC reports are up to date and ensure that your payments will be secure within the application. So again, just a quick overview of who Merchant E is. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is on the screen. At the same time, it was mentioned that we have a raffle that's been posted into the chat. So feel free to fill out the form to win a pair of the new AirPods. Or if you're on an Android, we can connect you with a Bose pair of headsets. So your choice between AirPods or the Bose. But again, thank you for your time, and we appreciate the opportunity to sponsor.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeremy. We appreciate you sponsoring the user group. All right. So at this point, we'll go ahead and get into the main part of our presentation today. The first person we're going to hear from is Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting. So Dana, I'll let you go ahead and take over from here.
Great, thank you. I will share my screen. Excuse me. Apologize if I'm coughing today. I don't know what that's about. I'm showing a PowerPoint in PDF just so it doesn't, because I'm going to flip between that and NetSuite makes it easier. And because I'm the first one going today, I just wanted to give you a reminder about questions. So you can use the chat window. We'll try to have any board members on or anybody jump in and answer questions as we go. We probably won't do a lot of Q&A with each speaker today because we're splitting it up so much, but we do hope at the end that there'll be time for questions. I'm Dana Larson Consulting. As we said, been with the user group for a while. When Jeremy mentioned 2010, I think we used to meet back in conference rooms back then, and we'd be happy if we had 10 people. So it's kind of fun to see where it's gone. So I've got a few minutes this morning to talk to you just about the cash transactions in NetSuite. So basically this is kind of the warm up to the presentation, where we're going to talk about every transaction that hits a cash account in NetSuite, how it works, where they come from. And I'm showing you this PowerPoint, just this is all of the ones that we're going to talk about, but we're not going to use the PowerPoint. It's going to be available for you on the website, as Cory said. So I just wanted to flip through it real quick to show you what it looks like. But PowerPoints, sometimes they're not as meaningful. So what I'd like to do is instead just show each of the transactions in NetSuite. I just wanted you to know that it was going to be available as a PowerPoint later. Okay, so we're going to hop right in because we need to, we have a lot of ground to cover today. So the first one we're going to talk about is the cash sale. And this is just your basic, it goes straight to income. When you do a cash sale, you're not using an invoice or a sales order. And you'll note that it can
Dana, you dropped out for a moment there.
Oh, I did?
Well,
sorry.
could be it's
Might
my
be
internet
mine, yeah.
connection is unstable, it says.
I heard her fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't see a notice, but thanks. Do let me know if you can't hear me. So the cash sale will go either straight into the bank, or you could do undeposited funds. And undeposited funds is typically where you gather some deposits and then make one deposit in your banks. If your bank is recognizing those payments as one line in the reconciliation, so that you don't have to try to have 20 cash sales that match up to one, and just think you've got a stack of checks on your desk and you're going to go make a deposit. It's kind of old school. I don't think you do that anymore, but in case you do. So what we're going to talk about today on each of these is the GL impact. And I wanted to point out there's 3 places you can look at the GL impact on transactions, or 3 options that may be there. Sometimes it's a button like this. Sometimes it's in the actions drop down, and sometimes it's down here as a tab, depending on how your administrator has set that up. One thing to note, if you're looking at it down in the tab, you can't print it or export it. But if you're looking at it in the actions drop down, or this one, like I'll click on GL impact here. And this is really helpful with huge journal entries that you want to do some reviewing. You can click on this export and take it out to Excel and do what you need to do, reviewing it. But you can't do that when it's down in that lower tab. So just a note. So let's look at this cash sale. You're going to go, the debit will of course be to cash, and then you have your revenue. Now I picked one that has inventory so that you see it has the sale that you made was for the 2000, but you've got COGS of the 1400 to show it coming out of inventory. And then you also have your inventory in stock. So, this is taking it out of inventory, excuse me. And this is the COGS. So this is the in and out for inventory and COGS. And then we also sold a non-inventory item that was just 200 in sales. There was a discount and some tax. And so you can see the cash sale has a lot going on behind it. If in fact you hit an inventory item in that cash sale, it's very unusual to use a cash sale for inventory because of fulfillments and things like that, but it does happen. So especially just over the counter if you're using it that way. All right, the next one is a customer deposit. Customer deposits are when you receive money in advance of a customer getting their goods. And you want to track that deposit, but you don't necessarily have anything to apply it to yet. Now, keep in mind, these can be attached to a sales order, or they can be standalone. So if you don't use sales orders, you can receive a customer deposit and just put it out there to say, okay, I received this money, but what am I going to do with it? You have to hang on to it. This is an example of the GL impact tab is not down here, so I'm going to look for it right here. And you can see that it goes into cash, and then it creates a liability because the customer hasn't received the goods yet, but you've received their money. And so in this case, the customer deposits is a delivered account when you get NetSuite. And it's going to hang on to that customer deposit. It's going to recognize the name. And so it will know if you have unapplied deposits. And so let's look at, turn to customer deposit. So you can also create a deposit off of a sales order if you want to associate the deposit with the sales order. So there's this button on a sales order to create that deposit. And then when you go to receive payments from the client, you'll see the deposit sitting out there waiting for you to apply. And that will, if you go to the customer and say receive payment, then it's going to show up in the as the deposit. And so you'll see all of them down here or just the one. So here you've got invoices that you can apply it to, but it's a smart account. And so if you want to know what payments you don't have applied, you can search for it with a save search. You can say your type is customer deposit, and then you can filter on status, and that would be if they're not fully applied, then you know that it's an outstanding customer deposit. So at month end, when you're trying to reconcile your customer deposits, you can use that filter to see them all. All right, and if we go, we already looked at the GL impact on that one. And let's keep going. Customer payment. So I'm on the payment screen. So this is just simply payments that are applied against open invoices, or to apply the deposit against an invoice. And when there's a deposit applied against an invoice, it will create a GL impact of moving it from the customer deposit against the accounts receivable, or a payment is typically just bank account accounts receivable. And so, but when you receive a payment from a customer, you'll see all of their invoices available, all of their credits, and all of their deposits. So this would be credit memos would show up here. All right. We have, this is a feature that I recently was introduced to, automated cash application. So this works with the bank match. So this is where you're applying customer payments automatically to their open invoices based on what the bank sends you. All right, so to start at the beginning, there would be, you would go to transactions bank, match bank data is if you're using that and you're importing all of your bank transactions, you would always run that first to import your bank transactions. And then what happens is if they're not matched, it will say, so that means that you don't have anything in NetSuite right now that relates to that deposit. It's going to give you an opportunity to match it against open invoices with the customer. And so by doing this match, it's pretty cool because it creates the customer payment at the same time as it applies it to the invoice and deposits it into your bank account. So it takes care of 3 transactions in one by just going to this automated cash application. And again, it's transactions, bank, and then it's down here, automated cash. So in this case, these were the deposits that weren't matched when we were doing our matching. And it's giving us the opportunity to say, what do I want to apply this to? And so in this case, the above the cloud, we picked the customer above the cloud, and it was for 46,000. So this is when we would say, what do we want to apply it to? And you can see that it did 20 on that one, 9 on that one, and 16 because it's trying to come up with 46,000. But you could redo these applications, and then you can even view the invoices from here. And then if you check this box and submit it, it's going to create that payment, deposit it into the bank, and apply it to those invoices. So it's pretty cool. I was excited about it. Now, it doesn't work if you have a lockbox and you have one deposit for 30 different invoices, but it will work for ACHs, things that go into your bank, one deposit at a time. All right. Then we have, let's see. Sorry, I have my PowerPoint up in the other screen, so I'm trying to follow along with that. I'm going to go back to the deposit now. So when you make a deposit, basically, so you're doing transactions, bank, make deposit, and there's a couple of reasons you would do that. One is to clear out your undeposited funds. And so when you do that, you say, I'm going to pick these payments, and they all went in together. So, and I'm going to deposit them into my bank. So if we look at the GL impact of this, it hits cash with one line. So that's going to help your bank reconciliation. And then it takes undeposited funds and removes them all. So this is a balance sheet only type transaction. You've already received the payments from those consolidated trucking and you put it into undeposited funds. But I wanted to show you a gotcha here. I did this deposit, but if I go back and I try to edit it, let's see, note this little yellow banner comes up and it says your deposit total has been changed. And that was just by me clicking on the edit button, and some payments may have been filtered out. So what we have to do is come down here and you'll notice that I had a filter from the last time I did a deposit. These filters are really handy for deposits, so I recommend you use them, but be very careful if you're editing a deposit. And trust me, I found this out the hard way, as we do, right? So what I'm going to say now is if I go through 12/31/23, it's going to pull up that missing payment that was originally on this deposit. And then now you'll notice the banner is still there, but I can look at my deposit amount and see it's 701,750. And that's the same as what it was originally. So now I know I've fixed it to what it was originally. And so in this case, I was trying to update, say, a location or something on a deposit. I edited it, put in the location, but because I had a filter, it filtered out those deposits. All right. When you're doing a deposit, you can also do cash back, which is super helpful. Let's say there was a bank fee. You can add a bank fee right here, which would reduce the amount of your deposit and hit your expense account at the same time. So let's try, if I do, I'm just going to put in a miscellaneous expense of $10. Maybe it was a wire. And when I save that, we can look at the GL impact. And you'll see undeposited funds, and now it's hitting that directly. So that's how you can add those cash back transactions right away. You can also do other deposits, which would be you have a rent, like an interest income or something on a bank account, you would put right here. You could say, I received $10 in here, and it has nothing to do with an invoice, anything like that. You just want to add that deposit. So this is where you add that. You don't have to select payments when you make a deposit. You can just come in and say transactions, bank, make deposit, and go into other deposits and enter what you need. Okay. And we're going to go to check. So this is your basic, I'm gonna do a check right now. And so I go into transactions, bank, write check. Now, again, this would not typically have anything to do with a payable because you're not paying a bill. You're going straight to either the expense account, or you could actually purchase items using this, but typically you're hitting an expense account. When you do this, this to be printed right here will queue this check up to show up in your checks to be printed. Or if someone has handwritten a check, you would uncheck that and you would put in your check number manually, and then this wouldn't queue up to print anywhere. And here you're selecting your expense account. And so if we look at GL impact on this, it's just cash and it hits directly to the expense account. Let's see. Go to bill payments. So when you go to the bill payment screen, transactions, payables, pay bills, one thing that I find it really helpful is the filter. You can filter on what type of bills you want to pay. I put in this account for UK checking. These are all of the bills that are in that subsidiary. It's going to look at that subsidiary. And then you can say, oh, I want to pay these 3. But often you'll use an end date here. That's your due date, because you say, I only want to pay bills that are due before a certain day. And then it'll filter this list for you. You can also customize these filters in any way you want. And you can add custom records to do that, or custom fields on the record to do that, to help you filter out and pay the bills that you want to pay in one run. So if I check these 3 and say save, it's going to create checks or bill payments for each of these, and it's going to show them coming out of this account. If you say to be printed, then it's going to create those in your check run. If not, these might be ACH, so it'll just, you know, you're just entering the payment. You can also put a discount if you get a you know, 2% and 10. You can put your discount in here. There's also an employee advance as a cash. You can write a check to an employee, and you can say, this is an advance on their trip. I want to give them some cash, and then they now owe me that money. So if you look at your GL impact, it's going to put it into cash and advances paid. Advances paid is a receivable account, essentially. It's an other current asset account. It's, again, a smart account where NetSuite keeps track of the name that you put in on this check. So for example, now if I'm Andrew and I come back and I'm going to do an expense report, I can see that there's an advance for me. The minute I opened up this expense report, it popped up a message that said you have an advance to apply. So then what'll happen is, as you enter your expenses, it's going to apply it against that advance. So let's say I had $1,200 in expenses. It's only going to cut me a check in payables for $200. And then it's going to, the GL impact will be moving it out of advances and into against the expenses that you enter in your expense report. I think it's pretty powerful. I don't know how many companies do advances anymore, but it's a thing. All right. I've got just a couple more minutes, so I'm trying to move fast. Vendor prepayments. This is where you, just like the customer deposit side, you can make a vendor payment, and however you can use whatever account you'd like for the prepayment account. It's not it's not a pre-designed account for you to use, but you can associate that prepayment with a purchase order by opening the purchase order and say, enter customer or vendor prepayment, or you can just pay them and say, I want to put this prepayment in. Now, this prepayment was already entered before, and then it got applied. So once you have a prepayment in, you can decide who you want, what bills you want to apply it to. So I'm going to, when it first goes in, it's just going to be there basically as an asset, right? You're going to select an asset account. But then once you start having bills, let me see, vendor prepayment. Weird. I thought relationships. Okay. I thought it was going to show me how to apply it. To apply it, you would go to the bill, and when you go to pay the vendor, or to the vendor itself, when you go to pay the bill, you would see that prepayment out there waiting for you to pay. And I have a note in the slide that we did a more thorough explanation of vendor prepayments back in March of 23. Margie did a presentation, and so Cory showed you how to search on those presentations earlier, and so that should help you if you want to know more about the vendor prepayments. All right, and then you can do a customer refund. That would be typically from a credit memo, and when you do it from a credit memo, it would hit the cash and then accounts receivable. But you could also just do it from cash, where you're cutting cash and then hitting an expense directly. But typically it would be hitting AR, refunding one. You can also refund a cash sale. I don't know if I have that one in here. Nope. Cash sale then would just reverse it from the income account to the bank account. So that's just another transactions in your customers. You can refund a cash sale. I think I might have one here. Actually, it's going to hit list. This will show me my list of cash refunds. Nope, I didn't put one in there, but it's just reversing the cash sale. And then just have two more to go over real quickly. I realized I got away from my screen. My bank transfer. This one is real basic. You're just moving money from one bank account to the other. And when you put that in, it's just going to debit one account, credit the other. I did notice when I was doing this, when I picked a US account, this checking account, it only let me put into my US dollar account. I think there's a setting where you can set it up to allow for cash from one account as US dollars and say one in a foreign currency. And then over here, it would tell you the currency and you'd be able to put, well, in Canadian dollars, that was 75,000 or whatever. And in US dollars, it was 100. And so that it infers the rate that you got. But in this case, it only let me do it US to US. So I think that might be a setting, and I wasn't able to get to the bottom of that before our presentation. And then the last one I have is the currency revaluation. You can do this mid-month, or you can, typically it's part of your month-end close, but it's under financial revalue open currency balances. And typically it'll revalue bank accounts, open receivables, open payables. So if I have receivables that are in a different currency than my bank account, and this is going to be a reversing journal entry, but at the end of the month, it's going to say, well, you had some gain because when you originally sold it, the exchange rate was low. See that the transaction rate, but now my rate is this. So you're going to gain some money on this. So it'll put it in as a reversing entry, but it does hit your hit the bank account temporarily. Or the accounts receivable and unrealized. Sorry, actually this one, it would hit the bank account if it was a foreign currency balance that you were holding. And so I gave you a bad example. It's not hitting the bank here. But if it was a Canadian account that you were holding in a US dollar subsidiary, it would revalue it at the end of the month to say, oh, now these Canadian dollars are worth this much to you. But again, it's an unrealized gain or loss. And so it would reverse the beginning of the next month. And so those are the cash related transactions that we have in NetSuite to go over today. I don't know if we want to, did you guys answer everything, or do we want to cover anything before we move to Margie?
I don't think there were any questions. So if anybody has any questions about anything Dana just talked about, please feel free to post that in the chat window and we can have a conversation about it there. But at this point, yeah, we'll just dive right back in and turn it over to Margie.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hang on. Get to the. All right. Can you all see my screen and hear me well?
Looks good and
Okay.
sounds good.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dana, for providing an introduction. And just like the prior presenter and our future presenters, I too am a board member. I'm going to take the next 20 minutes to talk to you about a SuiteApp that came out about a year ago and provides a cash, it's the cash management, it's Cash 360, and it's a cash management dashboard to see real-time balances of what is impacting your incoming and outgoing cash and provide projections into the future. So at first I was like, okay, this is not all that great, but it's nice to see a snapshot of everything at one time, kind of like Item 360. But then I started digging in and looking at the projections into the future, and I drank the Kool-Aid. So now I'm a believer, and it's a pretty powerful tool. It's still somewhat elementary, and there are a number of improvements or bugs that came up, but still, as you know, in NetSuite, they come out with something and they release it and then they improve it over time. So that is my hope. I see this as a benefit. This Cash 360 dashboard is a benefit for accountants and C-level execs like controllers, comptrollers, CEOs, CFOs, COOs. So I only have 20 minutes. And oh, by the way, and like Dana, mine is not a live demo because I actually don't have, what is it, OneWorld, and this only works if you have OneWorld. So I had to beg and borrow and, well, not steal, but finally found a customer that would allow me to use a little bit of their data and modified some of it in their account, as long as I promised not to show who they were. So I apologize for not being able to do a live demo, but our demo database that we have did not have any data in it that would go back as far as I needed in order to show the benefit of this. So just hang with me here. How do you install it? You install it by going to your SuiteApps tab up at the top of your production system. And from there, you just type in Cache 360 and it'll pop up and you select install. And as I said before, it was first released about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. So there is a lot of improvements that we hope will come. There is some setup that needs to be done. And at the end of this slide deck, I'm not going to be having time to go into it today. I talk about what you need to set up, what NetSuite recommends from their help, as far as what permissions should be set for the various roles that are going to access it. And the main thing is there's just sort of one thing that you need to check in your role, which means you have to modify the role, and that's a checkbox that says access 360 Cache 360 dashboard. So in this picture below at the bottom, this is what it looks like after you install it. It shows up in the financial tab, and if you look at the bottom of the financial tab on your account, under Cache 360, there are two options, account category and dashboard. We're going to go into both of those options today. I do want to let you know that since admins don't have that option to have the financial tab, you can actually, at the end of this slide deck, I have a slide to how to implement a custom tab so that you too, as administrators, can access the Cache 360 dashboard. So this is a snapshot of what it looks like. And I don't, there's a lot going on here. There's basically three sections. You see this top section that has links and tiles. In the middle section is showing a graph and a chart, and the bottom section is showing some pie charts. So we're going to be looking at those and what each of those provides. And as you see on the left side, highlighted in the darker blue, we're looking at the Cache 360 dashboard, where there are actually two other sections to this too, cache forecast and preferences. And it's the cache forecast, which is sort of this middle section here where it says cache forecast, that really provides the kick here. So as I mentioned, there are three options here. The Cache 360 dashboard is what you were just looking at and provides a snapshot of current transaction and provides a snapshot of the cache forecast section. The cache forecast section provides a detailed breakdown of what your cash flow will look like moving forward based on preferences you set and outstanding AR AP transactions within those timeframes, where the preferences is actually which allows you to select and remove categories, these account categories, categories like groupings of income expense accounts and additional values that you set that impact sort of the ad hoc or what if cash forecasting. The cache, taking another look, we're going to go back and start drilling down, but I wanted you first to notice, you see in the upper right corner above the payables tile that you can actually see something that says subsidiary and it says Denver headquarters. Well, the really cool thing about this is that if you actually were to click on that, you would see all of the different subsidiaries that you have access to, and you could select any, and then those tiles would change and show the bank balance, accounts payable, accounts receivable, such like that, and your cash forecast. Everything would change based on the subsidiary that you choose. So we're going to drill down into the top and the bottom section right now, and we'll talk about the middle sections in a few moments, because the top and the bottom are basically showing what is. These are transactions that exist right now. So drilling down and sort of expanding that, you can see that there are a bunch of links in the under the actions, and then there's tiles. These tiles are showing your current bank balance, receivables, payables, and of course that's by subsidiary. And then the links are just standard links within NetSuite, so you can get to some report. Have permissions, you can actually approve invoices from. You cannot modify them. They're not customizable. So if you can't choose like a different AP aging summary, you can only choose what's standard out of the box with NetSuite. At the bottom, you'll see these pie charts that show the AR aging summary, sort of what's in that tiles up at the top, and the AP aging summary, and it sort of breaks it down graphically for you with providing some a little bit more detailed information to the right of each of the pie charts. So now we're going to look, to me, where the value is. This is in the Cash 360 dashboards section, but it's the forecasting subsection of it. So drilling down into that, the forecasting section provides a graphical and chart representation of your cash flow forecast based on future AR and AP transactions and selections that you set in your preferences section. So this basically summarizes what that other selection is. It says forecast, and we'll go into that. So this is sort of summarizes that information and puts it right on the dashboard. So the graph shows what the closing balance will be at the end of each period based upon the preferences you set in the preferences section, where the chart shows a bit more detailed, breaking it out by whatever time periods you selected in the preferences section. So you can see on mine, I selected that by obviously week because it says week of. So I said, I want to see the next 6 weeks, and it's showing the current week, and then it's showing cash incoming, cash outgoing, and closing balance. The closing balance is what you see in that cash forecast graph to the left of it. And we're going to be seeing that the cash incoming and outgoing is accounts payable and accounts receivable plus other variables that you set up. Notice also that when I say cash incoming and cash outgoing, it's saying inflow and outflow. That's because it has its own, NetSuite has its own terminology that we'll be getting into in a little bit too, but they're referring to anything cash incoming as inflow and cash outgoing as outflow. So, how does Cash 360 forecast the future? Okay, that's really interesting. So some of it makes sense. You use your opening balances, which for some of you that aren't accountants, it's the sum of all accountants in your chart of accounts for the selected subsidiaries. And it uses future dated AR and AP transactions. Through the preferences area section, which you're going to be seeing soon, there are some other options. You have forecast period where you can say, well, I want to look at the next days, weeks, or months. Now you can't change these. It comes with standard select options for that. And you can't say, oh, I want to see 4 months out. You've got what you've got. Then also the number of months this provides in the preferences, you can select the number of months to look back into various accounts in your chart of accounts that you select using what's called account categories. Wow, that's the really powerful stuff. And I'll be drilling into that in just a moment. And you can look back either 3 or 6 months. So it's going to look back over the last 3 or 6 months to figure out moving forward based upon the last 3 or 6 months, what will it look like? That's how it's forecasting. But things don't always stay the same. It could be because you do sales and you have certain times of the year where sales are more prevalent, or maybe you're going to have a salary increase, things like that. So you can provide an increment or decrement percentage to that value moving forward. And then finally, there's something called additional values that we'll be looking at that you define that aren't available in NetSuite, such as sales for a new product line or new distributor, or upcoming capital expenditures, where you can set, the start date, the amount, is it incoming or outgoing cash, what's the recurrence and the recurrence type. So Cash 360 terminology. The first thing I want you to note is at the bottom of this is a Suite Answers. I highly recommend it as an excellent suite answers. It comes up with all the Cash 360 terms and definitions and gives you sort of the formulas, how it figures things out. So this is just a snapshot of something from the help where the inflow and outflow was defined. As you can see, the definition from NetSuite on your right, it's basically any money flowing in, and they give examples, and money flowing out gives examples. What I've added to this is, okay, so how does this relate to the chart of accounts? So inflow is anything in an income account or other income account, and outflow is anything in the COGS expense or other expense accounts. And those are the accounts that you'll be able to be adding into what we call these account categories that we're going to go into in a minute. So this is that, look in the left where the arrow is pointing. Now we're looking at the preferences section. And this is where you set up to provide information for forecasting. So here, first thing you'll see is you can say how many weeks, and I expanded that so you could see the options again. And then below that, you can see that you can look at users, the account categories that's highlighted in that blue there. That's where users can add and remove existing categories for what if reporting. So you see here, I've got a few that have been added, and we'll take a look and drill down into that in just a minute. And then you can say, oh, I want to look back over the last 3 months or 6 months. Those are the only options to figure out, to forecast what things will look like in the future. But knowing that things don't always stay constant, you can then enter in a % movement for that category. So we're going to explore the account categories next. And the only thing I want you to notice here is next to account categories, we have additional values. After we drill into account categories, I'm going to go back to additional values and show you what you can provide there. So Cash 360 account categories, notice you can get there from 2 places. If you have access to the financial tab, you then see the Cash 360 account categories, the one on top, or you can get there from your dashboard itself and you click the link view account categories. And if you have permissions from the view account categories, you could actually create a new account category. So what are these? So I've got 3 that are showing here. It's interest income, other income, salaries, and notice that it's by subsidiary. We're going to now, so these account categories list is going to provide a lot of the ad hoc forecasting that you can use. And so this is drilling down a little further. Okay, now Cash 360 account category. If I create one, what is it? It is a grouping of 1 or more accounts from the chart of accounts to be used in cash forecasting. So for instance, here in the salaries, I've decided that salaries isn't just salaries and wages, but I wanted it also to be the outside services contracts. And so it knows, because it picks up the subsidiary of the user. So it figures out that it's Denver headquarters. It must be, those accounts that you select must be the same type, inflow or outflow, and they can be imported using CSV imports. However, let me say, however, it's not quite there yet. In fact, it's not even documented in NetSuite. And I spent a bit of time exploring it because this is actually custom segments. You actually have to go to custom records and import these 2 custom into these 2 custom records or segments. And it's very convoluted. I'm not going to have time to go into it today, but I have provided a slide at the end to give you sort of all the information you need to know. And there's actually an error in providing the account name because it supposedly takes a subsidiary of the user, but I tried it from a demo account and I tried it from a customer's account, and both of them, it created a subsidiary as blank and therefore was unusable. So the next slide just shows you how you actually create it. So you go into Cash 360 category, you create the name, you say whether it's inflow or outflow, and then you select from the chart of accounts what line items, what accounts you want in there. And NetSuite is smart enough to know if you've accidentally added something that can't be added. Either it's you're doing an income, an inflow and it's an expense, or if you don't have access to that because of the subsidiary. You can only add accounts within your own subsidiary, and that is why subsidiary field doesn't even show here as an entry field. You can add a maximum of 1,000 account lines to the single category. The account category is shared across all roles that have access to the same subsidiary. And you can associate an account to only one account category. So if you have something here where you've said events is added to this other income, and then you can add events to another account category. Because of all of this, I highly recommend that you consider spending the time to determine what categories make sense for your company and have only a few people with access to creating these account categories. So back to the dashboard, and I said I'd get back to additional values. Additional values are similar to account categories, only they add other values that aren't defined in the chart of accounts, like expected sales for a new product line, capital expenditures that you're looking at, and whether or not, you know, what would happen to your cash flow if you added that capital expenditure. So you can name it. You say the starting date, the amount, what type, inflow or outflow, how often you want this to recur. You can only do 1 to 12, and whether it's monthly, weekly, etc. So the other thing to note is that NetSuite says that the additional values are shared across all roles that have access to the same subsidiary. That does not make sense to me. And of course, I couldn't try it since it was just me playing around and learning this product, but I'd be real curious if that's true. It just doesn't really seem to make sense that if I create an additional value in my Cash 360 account, why everybody else would be seeing that too. So the next thing I wanted to show you is drilling down in the cash forecast section. So now if you see in the upper left, in that blue with the white background, we're now looking at cash forecast. This information here is what's summarized in the Cash 360 dashboard in that middle section. So this is a cash forecast table showing the projection of financial inflows and outflows. And really, this is where the value is. I love this. This lets you predict your company's cash requirements and analyze your company's liquidity status. So you can drill down, and then there's links, and you can see that there's only links on opening balance, accounts receivable, accounts payable. Everything in yellow are things that were either account categories that I added that you saw previously, or in additional value. The thing with an asterisk, expected sales, is an additional value. So this is really valuable, but you can't export it. So I was like, this would be great, bring into a spreadsheet. Also notice across the top, because obviously I selected weeks, so it's showing each week what your opening balance is going to be, with your accounts receivables, etc. So you can actually drill down into the AR and AP to see what's expected for that time frame. So this is just a snapshot. One of the downsides of this is that NetSuite designed the real estate. You can only see like 6 lines at a time. So it uses like less than half of the real estate on the screen, and you just have to scroll down. That's why it would be really nice if you could export this, but you can't. So looking at the next slide here, I've actually drilled down into that week of 10/18, and it'll show me all the accounts payable that are due that specific week. And then you can export this if you like. And of course, if you have more than 100 transactions, you need to export it because it'll only allows you to view the first 100 transactions. So this is really helpful if you have a tight cash flow and you can see some transactions that can be held off for future dates to specific vendors that might not be as upset if you don't pay on time. So this slide, I'm not going to go into it. It tells you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can see that there's some great things like it's free. And the ugly, it won't work if you don't have OneWorld. So we implemented in 2002, and we don't have OneWorld. We're a legacy customer, and we'll never be able to use this or Item 360. And then under the ugly, I have under the account, the CSV imports and some other gotchas. And there are some, just look through this and you'll notice that there are some opportunities for improvement here. And then the setup modify roles, which I'm not going to go into. This comes from NetSuite, what they recommend for setting up based upon role. But the main thing is, the star of the show is you need to check the box that says Cash 360 access. And then these are the steps. I'm not going into them. This is from Suite Answers that exists on how to add Cash 360 to an admin role. There was an error in it, so I put in the correct information here. And then finally, importing account categories. This is, it is really kludgy. It's not even documented, so it's not quite there yet, but I know that NetSuite will be improving it over time. And I don't know if I've gone over my time, so I apologize if I have. And then you can go back and watch the video and put it in slow motion. So even with all that I've said, I still think it's a really good tool. It's just there's a lot to build upon to make it into a great tool. So thank you very much. And at this point, I will pass the baton over to Cory. Thank you. And I hope you gained something from this.
Thanks so much, Margie. There's one question that maybe off the top of your head. For future dated AR and AP, do these have to be approved transactions? I would presume that they do. Like for them to show up in Cash 360?
I don't know. I didn't test it, but I would also assume what you're assuming, that it would have to be.
Okay, because typically those transactions have no GL impact or potential GL impact until they're approved. And then does it use the due date of the transactions? I also
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Margie.
You're quite welcome.
Tons of great information. And again, everybody, we record these meetings and we post them on our website. On YouTube, we put in chapters. So if you want to skip ahead to a specific topic, when you're watching that video, you can just skip ahead to whatever topic you want to go back and review. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen to get my presentation going here. Just a moment. Okay, can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So also like Margie, I am just gonna have these slides. I have some screenshots from NetSuite to help kind of show everything, but I didn't have a live demo environment that I could show these things in action. But hopefully we'll be able to give you an idea of what the capabilities are and how to think about implementing these. And so one little trick when you're talking or looking about anything new or implementing anything new in NetSuite is that you can go to either Suite Answers or the NetSuite help system. And if there's something available, they're going to document how to implement it in your account, how to install it, all of the steps that you have to go through. Sometimes those things that you have to do there are going to be a little bit more complicated. Like if you have to modify advanced PDF templates or something, like you may not have the skill set to do that, but at least in the documentation, NetSuite will tell you how to do that. So to Margie's point, you can go to the Suite Answers and they will typically always have pretty good information on any of these things that we're talking about today. So right after my presentation, we're going to take a break and then we'll get into the topics from Mike Kachline. So I'm going to talk to you today about the payment link feature in NetSuite. I am Cory Anderson. You've heard from me a little bit earlier. I am the co-founder and principal of Stratos ERP Partners. We are NetSuite and Soligo consultants. So first of all, let's talk about what is Payment Link. So Payment Link feature allows your customers to conveniently pay an invoice online using a computer or a mobile device. Instead of having to contact you and discuss payment, your customers can receive an email of the invoice with a link to the payments page. They can choose which method they want to use to pay, including ACH, credit cards, and PayPal from a list that you have selected. Now, not all of those payment methods are going to be automatically available. I'll talk about what you need what you need in your system to be able to offer those different types of payment options to your customers. If you look over here on the left-hand side, this is just an example email, a potential email that you could send to a customer, and what it may look like when you have a payment link. So basically, they get an email. You can embed it in an attachment, or you can put this payment link embedded right into the body of the email itself as well. So some features of Payment Link. First of all, add a link to invoices that are sent to your customers. So this is one way to do it. You can allow partial payments of those invoices. You can include your company logo and information on the payments page so that it's fully branded. You can customize email templates used to inform customers of accepted or rejected payments. You can also use a link or a QR code in the body of an email, just like I showed you just a moment ago, or you could probably do both if you wanted to. And then on the payment link checkout page, a customer can review the invoice, choose a payment method, and then submit the payment. So those are the core features of the payment link. And before I move on, I will also mention that this payment link capability is free. It's something that you can turn on and implement in your account right now, but you do have to have a payment processor that's behind this. So for example, our SuiteApp sponsor today, Merchant E, is one of those credit card type payment processors that you could use. And Jeremy mentioned earlier that Merchant E has their own payment link feature that they can embed in your transactions or your invoices in NetSuite. But this feature is separate from anything that an external company is going to offer. So there's usually multiple ways to approach this. Okay, so next we'll talk about the prerequisites. Prerequisites to enable payment link is you have to enable payment instruments. And this is a little bit of a controversial thing. I was working with a client and they were implementing a new payment processor, and that payment processor said, don't enable payment instruments. It complicates things. But the payment instruments is a feature or a set, kind of like a configuration in NetSuite that is required for like more modern PCI compliance. And some of the features moving forward are going to require the payment instruments to be enabled. So if it's not enabled in your account, you do have to enable it. If you're already using credit card processor in NetSuite and you don't have payment instruments enabled, you definitely want to test your current processes after or before you turn on the payment instruments, because it does change the configuration on your sales orders and invoices and cash sales of how those credit card processes happen. So you have to allow online credit card payments. You have to set up one or more payment methods, kind of obvious. You have to set up and assign payment processing profiles for each credit card gateway you want to use. And then you also need to set up domain keys identified email, also known as DKIM, to authenticate the emails from your account. And if you send emails out of your account to your customers or vendors or anybody for that matter, you really want to have the domain keys identified email or the DKIM enabled and activated and tested in your system anyway. Like, this is not just a requirement for the payment link feature. If you do anything out of emails out of NetSuite, you should have this set up anyway. And again, Suite Answers or the Help Center tells you exactly how to set it up. So just a couple thoughts on credit card processors. So there's this article that I came across a while ago. It's actually from 2021, but it has an in-depth discussion about credit card processors that integrate with NetSuite from this guy, Tim Blair White. Tim Blair, I don't know his actual name, but timblairwhite.com. So you can go check that out. I'll post this in the chat window if you want to grab that link and go look at it. But it basically lists out all of the credit card payment processors that are integrated in the NetSuite ecosystem, or basically that NetSuite kind of allows to be integrated into the system. And so another thought here is that the processors are going to have setup fees. They're going to have recurring monthly gateway fees, and in addition to per transaction fees. So when you set up these credit card processors, they are going to help facilitate credit card transactions within NetSuite and with the payment link, but it's not free, right? They're going to charge you for those services. So just be aware of that they're going to have these fees ongoing to use their services. So ACH and PayPal, slightly different from the credit card processing. For ACH and PayPal, well, first of all, for ACH, you have to use VersaPay's SoluPay for NetSuite suite payments. And that means that, so VersaPay is a merchant processor or a payment processor that integrates in NetSuite. And they have this collaboration with NetSuite. So to use the ACH with the payment link, you have to use their solution. And like I said before, though, if you already have another payment processor such as Merchant-E, they're probably going to have a solution as well. So you don't necessarily have to use the internal NetSuite payment link feature to do that. And then if you want to do PayPal, you must use PayPal PayFlow Pro, which is a specific type of PayPal processing account. So those are the requirements for ACH and PayPal payment collection. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through the setup steps here. Try not to take too much time. I don't have a ton of detail on these, but again, Sweet Answers is really great. If you want to set it up, it'll walk you through it step by step. My goal here is to kind of give you an overview of what it looks like. So there's 4 steps to use a payment link. First of all, you have to enable payment link in your company preferences. Second step is you have to configure the payment link. Third step, customize the payment link email templates. And then the last step is to set up payment link invoice templates. So first step, enabling the payment link feature, set up company enable features under transactions. Once you do that, there will be a payment link configuration option under the commerce subtab. I'm sorry, commerce main tab, and then the payment link will be down here for you to go in and set up the configuration. Once you've done that and you're in the payment link setup page, you go to, again, commerce payment link. You can set up your domain. So you'll set up your domain name here so that it actually is the customer, when they're paying, like they know that it's coming from you, or the payment is valid, or the payment option is valid. You can set up your payment methods. So if you offer all of these different credit card methods, you can select them all or unselect those. Here's the option to accept partial payments. And I have a kind of a screenshot of that later on. Here's where you can add your company logo so that on the payment screen, it's also another validation that your customer is paying you. And then down here, you have these email templates. And so the email templates, there's 2 of them that you want to consider. There's a payment accepted template and a payment rejected template. By default, they're going to just be selected the standard notifications, but you can go and modify those email templates, add your company logo, any other information that you want to those email templates, and then they'll be selectable in these drop-down windows. So next step here is to customize the payment link email templates. To do that, you'll go to Setup Company System Email Templates. And then you'll have 2 of them that you're going to want to configure: payment confirmation email and a payment decline notification. So these are very standard if you've done any of the email template modifications. You can set a subject. You can do kind of a WYSIWYG edit down here. So what you see is what you get. There's also this little option right here that says div, where you can go to the HTML view of your template and actually just modify the whole email template in HTML. So if you have the skills to do that. And then if you notice here, there's some dynamic links. So it says dear transaction.customer.firstname, transaction.customer.company name. You can modify this to say, maybe just dear company name. You can also have automatic transaction date. So all of this is defaulted. You don't really want to change much of that, but you can certainly add or take away to those from that information that's on there. Next step is to set up the invoice templates. And here you're going to want to decide whether you want to send the invoice as an HTML in the body of the email message, or if you want to have it attached to the email as a PDF. So you would set this preference by going to the home, set preferences, transactions, printing. And this is a it's technically a per user setup. So each NetSuite user can go in and change this, but you can set a company default based on the role. So if you have custom roles, in that custom role, you can preset what this setting will be so that your users don't have to go in and set this manually. Also, you have to enable the advanced PDF and HTML templates. To enable this, you'd go to Setup Company, Enable Features, Suite Cloud, Suite Builder, and then check the advanced PDF HTML templates. I think it's probably pretty rare at this point where this is not enabled in accounts. But if you haven't set up and started using advanced PDF HTML templates, I highly recommend it. The templates look a lot more modern than the basic templates that NetSuite kind of defaulted to early on. So use the advanced PDF. And then to configure the invoice form, you'll go to customization forms, transaction forms. You'll check the printing type is advanced, and then you'll select the payment link templates for print and email templates that you set up. So I'm not going to go through all of this in NetSuite, but this is kind of something that you can come back to and help reference later on if you want to set this up in your account. So here's an example of an invoice email with a payment link. This is the one that I showed earlier. So here, there's just an HTML attachment up here. You can see that there's the pay now in the body of the email. Or you can also do this where it says copy the payment link to the clipboard, and then you can go open this up in a new tab if you want to. Or when your customer is paying. So there's an example of the invoice with the payment link. So once they click on that, it'll take them to the payment screen. Here's an invoice with the payment link QR code. So if you wanted to send the invoice via PDF attachment in the email, you can embed this payment link in the PDF. There's a secure link right here. This QR code allows them to scan it with a mobile phone, and then it'll automatically take them to your payment link page. So your payment link page is basically going to look similar to this, so that you would see what the payment amount was. You can see what the payment options are here. And then this side would be kind of a summary of what they're paying for, basically. So they can preview the transaction that they're going to pay for, choose the payment method. If you have the partial payment option enabled in your account, then this is what they would see. This payment amount is an editable field, so they can say, oh, I only want to pay $100 of this invoice, and they can do a partial payment there. But again, this is a feature you can disable. Actually, I think you have to enable it by default. I don't recall. But be aware of that if you're going to set that up. If you don't want them to be able to do partial payments, you can turn that off there. And then this is an example of what they would see after that payment is complete. You'll get a thank you, your payment has been successful. And then they'll also get a view of the invoice amount due. Obviously, at that point is going to be 0. And then that payment will show up against that invoice in NetSuite automatically and create the payment record for you. And then here's a view of the mobile payment screen. Just kind of an example of what that would look like. Okay, so that's all I have to talk about for the payment links. Let's see if there's any questions on any of that.
Cory, I do have one question
Yeah, sure.
note, because I know we looked at this. Who exactly gets the email? And I think I don't remember. I think it's the email on the customer record, but do you know?
I don't know specifically, but yeah, I would presume it's the default email address on the customer record. Well, yeah, that's a good question, because it could also be if it's not the default email on the transaction.
Yeah, which it might be. Well, because I think you can pay for, I think payment link, you can also pay what NetSuite calls invoice groups, if I remember right.
Right.
If I remember
Yep.
that's right. So I guess a note for the audience is the who gets the email. I think it's the primary email on the customer record, but just test that when you're looking at this function.
Yeah, it seems logical that it would that it would default to that, especially if there's like an invoice group where there's multiple invoices involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems logical. Okay. So Doozy Solutions says, from what I remember, Payment Link was using the primary email on the customer record. Thank you, whoever that is at Doozy. And then Ryan says, one cool thing we did at Message Media was taking payment links and sending them over SMS as well. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. So there's lots of options with this payment link of basically kind of expediting the process of getting your customers to pay you, making it a seamless process for them to pay you. And that's going to help your cash flow income.
Cory had the question about discounted terms.
Oh, with payment links, does it honor the discounted terms? That's a great question. I don't know, but I'll find out, Roy, and I can post it in our LinkedIn forum. Yeah, I'll find out about that. And then Deirdre says we added a customer email field on the customer profile, and that is who gets the email. Customer email field on the customer profile, and that's who gets the email. Okay, that's good to know. Awesome. Okay. All right. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on. And if there's any questions we can't answer here, I'll take those questions away and post them, answer those in our LinkedIn forum later on. Okay, so next thing I'm going to talk about is the Dunning Letters SuiteApp. So this is a SuiteApp from NetSuite that is not free. You do have to pay an additional subscription fee for the Dunning Letters module. It may be bundled with some types of NetSuite accounts automatically, but if you don't have it, it can typically be added to your account for an additional subscription fee. So first of all, what is Dunning? So Dunning is the process of methodically communicating with customers to ensure the collection of accounts receivable. And the NetSuite Dunning Letters SuiteApp enables you to set up an automated Dunning process to help manage the collection of your accounts receivable and send reminder letters before payment is due. So it's basically a way to automatically send payment reminders. If something is overdue, the whole process will keep sending reminders until your customer pays their invoice. So advantages of the Dunning SuiteApp versus custom workflows, because I've seen it done both ways. You can use the Dunning SuiteApp and all of its features, but you can also do this process by custom workflows. And you know, you can set up a save search to say, okay, well, here's all the invoices that are 30 days overdue. Send an email to all of those customers. And that's a relatively simple workflow process to set up. And maybe you would set up, you know, 3 or 4 different workflows to do that. So maybe you have a 30 days, 60 days, 90 days overdue kind of process. And you can do that via workflow for sure. But the advantage of using the Dunning module is that you would be able to send all open invoices to a customer in one email. So even if there are invoices that are not overdue, when you send them an email through the Dunning module, you can include all of their open invoices, and they can decide, oh, maybe I'll just pay these invoices early. Probably not likely, but it's certainly a possibility. Another advantage is that you have the ability to oversee the Dunning process manually. And so if you set up a custom workflow to send these email notifications automatically, you don't really have the ability to review and approve. I think theoretically, you could build in an approval process to a workflow where you have to maybe check a box to approve that it goes to the Dunning letter gets sent to a customer, but that would be really tedious. So with the Dunning module, it gives you the ability to see an entire list of invoices that need to be sent, and you can choose which ones you want to send. You can just say, okay, go ahead and send them all, or you can pick and choose just the ones you do want to send. So that's kind of, I think, a big advantage of the Dunning module. And then on the customer record, I'll show you an example of this towards the end here, you can view the dunning status. And so the dunning status would be like, if you have multiple dunning levels, you might have dunning level 1, 2, and 3, which might equate to 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. If a customer is dunning level 3, then that means they have at least one overdue invoice of 90 days or more. And you know that, hey, maybe you don't want to take another order from that customer until they pay their open invoices. So you can see that on the customer record. In theory, you could build that in with the workflow, but you'd have to kind of be adding all of those features in with that custom workflow process. So some of the features of the dunning module. So you can have customer level dunning. This is the recommended method from NetSuite. So in customer level dunning, you're sending a dunning letter with all overdue invoices of the customer attached. Non-overdue invoices are also attached to the dunning letter if they meet any one of the dunning level criteria. So you can configure what invoices are sent in these dunning emails. And when we say, by the way, when we say dunning letter can be an email, which is kind of probably the default option, but you can also print these out and put them in an envelope and send them in the mail. And the dunning module gives you the ability to choose either emails or printing to facilitate this. The other option here is invoice level dunning. So invoice level dunning is used when a company wants to treat one or more invoices of a customer according to different rules or using a different email template. So you can set it up by invoice instead of at the customer level. And then there's also the option to do invoice group level dunning. So this is used when your invoices are added to a group using the invoice groups feature, which is what Mike just mentioned is the invoice grouping. Okay, so just gonna kind of walk through a high level of the setup tasks. The first time that I implemented dunning, I hadn't done it before, and guess what I did? I went to SuiteAnswers, I read about how to do it, and figured it all out. And so I went through and I configured it just by reading SuiteAnswers. So it is possible to do that. But as I mentioned before, there are some steps like customizing email templates and the PDF for templates that you may not have the capabilities to do. So you just have to be aware that there may be some things that you may be not comfortable with doing. So this diagram is kind of the high level overview of the setup tasks. There's setup tasks for an administrator. And I mean, I think realistically, the administrator is probably going to be doing like all of these things at the end of the day. But the point here is that there's these roles that come with the dunning module. There's a dunning director role and a dunning manager role. And so the way NetSuite sets it up is they say, oh, these are the things that the administrator or the dunning director could do. And then here's the things that the dunning director should do. And then there's a dunning manager. So you do need to consider when you're setting this up, who in your company is going to be the dunning director versus the dunning manager. The dunning director is the person that would basically design the process and say, okay, we're gonna send dunning letters at 30, 60, and 90. And then the dunning manager is the person that's going to be monitoring and overseeing the actual process of sending out the dunning letters over time. So I'm not going to go through all of this in detail. This screenshot is in SuiteAnswers, so you can go back in and take a look at that later on. So now I'm going to walk through the different elements of the dunning module. And so these are basically specific record types that are used to help you configure how you want the dunning process to work. So first of all is the dunning procedure. So the dunning procedure defines the escalation points or dunning levels and the time that must elapse before a dunning letter is sent to a customer. So an example, you may have a dunning procedure called all customers, 15, 30, 45, and 60. So in this scenario, you would say you want to send a dunning letter when the invoices are overdue by 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, and 60 days. And you can do anything you want. So you can say 15, 60, 90. You could say 60, 90, 120. You could say, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, whatever you want to set up, you can set that up here. So this is just an example. On the dunning procedure, you can also define a specific customer group with a save search. So if you have customers from different channels, like maybe you only want to send wholesale customers dunning letters, you can choose that if you have the ability to segment them, or if you have multiple subsidiaries, you want to have a separate dunning procedure per subsidiary. You can define customer groups within this dunning procedure. Here you can also set the dunning procedure to send automatically or manually. I recommend that if you're setting up dunning for the first time, you don't let it go automatically. Definitely do the manual approach, and then you can review all of the letters that would be sent before you set it up and send them out. And then once you start using it and you trust what's happening and the emails that are coming up to be sent, and if all you're doing is going in and say, yep, that looks good, hit approve all and then go, you can just set it up to run automatically in the future if you want to. And then the other thing in the dunning procedure is it contains the dunning level rules. So we'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. So here's a dunning procedure. This basically have the name. We can say it applies to customer. Here we would also say if we wanted it to apply to invoices, we could change that here. Minimum dunning interval. This is basically you have to have for this procedure level 1, you could say, interval is 1 day. So you could say this is able to send once every day if you want. Here's your sending schedule where we could choose either manual or automatic. You do have to define a default dunning manager. In this scenario, this is configured as a generic email address. So if you wanted it to be the email to come from like ar@yourcompany.com, then you would basically set up a user in NetSuite or an employee record with that email address, and then you would choose that as your default dunning manager. Down here, we can choose the subsidiary that it's valid for. You can segment it by departments, locations, classes if you want. If you have it set up as an invoice type procedure, you would choose your save search for the invoice here. In this case, this is a customer one, so here's the save search that would define the customer, the customers that this would send to. And then this is important. So this allows you to automatically assign this dunning procedure to new customers when the new customers are created that meet this criteria. And this is important to check this box, because if you don't check this and new customers are created, then you have to go back in and manually assign a dunning procedure later on. So this is just going to help you be a little bit more efficient with your dunning processes. So here's the bottom half of the dunning procedure window. Here is where we'll define basically the dunning level rules, and you have to set these up in advance, and I'll show you the dunning level rules here next. But on the dunning procedure, this is where you would set up and say, these are all the rules. So my dunning level rule 1 is 15 days, level 2 is 30, level 3 is 45. You can choose the currencies that this applies to. You can also choose a minimum transaction amount that this applies to. So if you wanted to say, oh, invoices, I only want to done invoices that are over $1,000, you can set this up here. I think in a lot of cases it makes sense just to say anything over $0, any invoice that has value. So you can just set that as 0 here. And then over here, you set your days overdue, and then the template. And the template is the email template that would be sent out. So next is the dunning level rule. So the dunning level rule defines the days overdue and the outstanding amount thresholds in various currencies. So as an example, this is a 15 days overdue rule. We would name it here. we can choose the number of days overdue here. And then on the next screenshot, this is kind of the bottom half of it. So we can also apply minimum transaction amount at the Dunning level rule, and that'll kind of default in when you're setting up your Dunning procedure. When you're applying this rule to the Dunning procedure, it brings in this minimum transaction amount, and you can set the minimums per currency on the Dunning level rule. And then you also have to have a default. So in this case, the USD is the default currency for this rule. Okay, so next part of the Dunning process is the Dunning template. So this is where you define the email template or the PDF. So if you're going to email the transactions, you set it up here, or if you're going to print the transactions and put them in an envelope and send them in the mail, you set up a PDF template here to print those out. So the Dunning template, basically, the options here are, you can attach copies of the invoices. You can say only overdue invoices here, or you can just, like I said before, send all invoices to your customer if you want. You can attach a statement if you want. You can say only open invoices. And then you can choose a custom statement form if you're going to attach a statement date, statement start date. So these are just some of the features that you can set up on the Dunning template. This is the bottom half of the Dunning template setup screen. So here we would set up the email template. So this is an email template that you set up separately, and this is not like an advanced PDF HTML template. It's like the one that I showed with the payment link, where you can go in and set up the email template here and customize it, put your logo in, customize the signature if you want, that kind of thing. And then if you wanted to do the printing the templates, you would go to the PDF tab here and choose your advanced PDF HTML template that you set up to send the Dunning on here. So those are the Dunning, basically the elements of the Dunning. So you have the Dunning procedure, the Dunning level rules, and the Dunning templates. All right, so now let's talk about the customer record. On the customer record sub-tab, basically you can automatically assign Dunning procedures, as I mentioned earlier. You can see their current Dunning level. You can see who their Dunning manager is, which you want to set that default, as I mentioned. You can pause the Dunning for a specific customer, and then by default, Dunning letters are emailed to the primary email address on the customer record. This can be changed by selecting a Dunning recipient. So on the customer record, this is what it looks like. So when you install the Dunning module, you get this Dunning subtab, and usually it's like way over here on the right. I recommend kind of moving it over to the left-hand side of this subtab menu. So here, allow letters to be emailed. When this is checked, that's going to go to the default email address on the customer record. And just so you know, you have to have an email address on your customer record, or the Dunning module will throw an error, and your admin will get a Dunning email error notice because it can't apply a Dunning procedure to a customer record that doesn't have an email address. So you also want to make sure all of your customers have an email address when you're setting up your Dunning procedures. So down here under the procedure setup, you can see this is the Dunning procedure that would be defaulted to this customer. You can see when the last email was sent with the Dunning module to this customer. You can also pause and then, pause the Dunning and then choose the Dunning pause reason here. And then if they were overdue on anything, the Dunning level would show here. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, this has 5 levels of Dunning. The Dunning level would be either 1 through 5 if they had any overdue invoices here. And then the Dunning manager, again, that's basically, you can just choose like a default email address like ar@yourcompanyname.com. So that's on the customer record. Then on the manual, basically there's this email sending queue. And so when you go to the email sending queue, if you've set this up to be manual, this is what you'll see. So you can choose a specific customer if you want. You can filter this by subsidiary, by the procedure, by the Dunning level. And then once you choose these options, you'll see a list of dunning letters that are scheduled to be sent at the bottom of this page. I didn't have an example to show you what that looked like, but basically you would just see the customer's name, the invoice number, the amount, and then you can choose whether or not you want to just send it all to all of the customers that are coming up in that list, or you can pick and choose ones to exclude or just to send to. So this is just a preview of that manual email sending queue. So a few limitations. Only accounts with the multiple currencies feature enabled can use the Dunning Letters SuiteApp. The accounts I've set this up in had multiple currencies set up already. So I have not actually attempted to set up Dunning in an account that doesn't have multiple currencies, but this is kind of a big deal because setting up multiple currencies in your account is a one-way street. Once you set it up, you cannot turn it off once you turn on multiple currencies. So you have to be prepared to deal with the multiple currencies, which is basically all of your transactions are going to have multiple currency options set up on them moving forward. So that's kind of a limitation, I think. The maximum number of Dunning levels that you can add to a Dunning procedure is 15. I mean, that's a lot. So I don't know that I can't imagine you'd really want to go over that, but I suppose there's a possibility. When printing letters using the Dunning PDF printing queue, the system can print only up to 100 letters at a time. That's, just a limitation. And then when sending emails, the system can only send up to 100 letters at a time. So you print or email 100, you go back to your queue and then do another 100 if you have that many overdue invoices. Hopefully you don't, but those are just some basic limitations. Okay, so that's the end of Dunning. At this point, we're going to take a quick break. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. If you have any questions on the Dunning module or the payment link, I'll try and answer those during our break if you want to post them in the chat window. But at this point, I will stop sharing this and we'll go into our 5-minute break. Thank you all for listening, and I hope that was valuable to you. So give us just a few minutes and we'll be back. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Kachline from Vertafore, and he's going to go through all kinds of fun stuff related to cash management as well.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Can you all see my screen fine and hear me fine?
We can see and hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to talk about receivables cash. It's, for some of you, this might be basic. For some of you, hopefully everybody picks up something. A little something. So high-level topics, just some super high-level intros of what I'm going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about 3 things: checks and derivatives there, ACH, and then credit cards. From a super high-level intro, like, why am I talking about this? My name's Mike Kachline. Kind of from a history standpoint, I definitely have a long history background with PCI DSS, PA DSS, credit card security. I'm a developer by nature. I've actually written software that interfaces with a gateway by both the internet and modems, if y'all remember the old modem dial-up stuff. And actively these days, I manage a NetSuite system where we transact thousands of payments a month that use all 3 of these payment methods. So I think a big theme you'll get in this talk will be just like lessons learned and pain points as you navigate through this same world. All right, so just a super broad brush, although really Dana covered a lot of this. Cory did too, is just, when you talk about cash, you talk about bank and book. Right? When you do reconciliation, you're reconciling the bank to the book. So your books are NetSuite. So how does NetSuite represent cash? And in a nutshell, anything that hits an account on your GL where the account is of type bank, that's what we're talking about cash here. The second thing is how NetSuite represents cash is it has this concept of a payment method or a payment instrument. I know Cory mentioned payment instruments. I can tell you that we did go through that transition from the older payment methods to the newer payment instruments. I would absolutely agree. It takes testing. It's definitely disruptive to do. I would recommend you do it. So how do you know if you need this? You'll see a screenshot later, but if you're a fairly new NetSuite instance, you're already on payment instruments, you don't care. If you've been using NetSuite for a while, you're probably not on payment instruments. And I could tell you all of NetSuite's documentation strongly advises that people start considering moving to them. But payment instruments or payment methods, they try and do the same thing, which is like, I want to tell the computer different ways that I can receive cash. So again, new instances use payment instruments. The old ones you're using payment method. Migration does have bumps, but you can do it. If you consider a third-party platform, make sure if you're on payment methods, make sure that that third-party platform supports payment instruments. Otherwise, you will be singing sad songs when you do finally move to payment instruments. Okay, here's a note on enabling it. It's really as simple as checking a checkbox, but I promise it's another one of those no going back things. So if you check this box under enable features, there is no going back. You want to test in your sandbox. This is also though where you can turn on some other things, credit cards. I think a lot of people are going to have their credit cards already turned on. If not, this is a great talk for you. All right. Okay, so how is cash actually received? So we're going to talk about, well, there's cash. We're actually not going to talk about cash because usually if you're using NetSuite, you're not actually, I guess some customers would do this, but you're not actually like having a cash register in front of you and receiving paper bills. But that is a way to receive cash. There's checks and lockbox. It's funny when I did this talk, like the history of the evolution of money here. Like, you know, cash is a piece of paper with a number on it that represents 20 US dollars, whereas checks is a piece of paper, but there's no number on it. So we'll kind of go through this. It's really interesting to watch there. So we're going to talk about checks, ACH, and credit cards, and the kind of derivative purchase cards. There's also a concept called wires, which is sort of kind of like ACH, but you can do it more internationally. We're not going to talk about wires. And then I'm going to do this broad brush of third-party payment platforms, which is, in my mind, is kind of a layer on top of these things. So it's like just talk to us and we'll make all this other stuff go away. Like we'll figure out whether it's an ACH or credit card or check, just talk to us. One other theme in this talk here will be the cost of cash, right? So if you, in this whole thing here, we're talking about receiving cash, so receivables cash. And every payment method you use has a particular cost to it, right? So part of it is minimizing your cost of cash here. Usually that cost comes in the form of fees. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about is checks. So for those of you, most of us have seen checks, but I am learning that some of the younger generations have actually never seen these things because honestly, they never use them. Everything's now electronic, but in the world of business, these things are still kind of pretty common. So a check is a piece of paper. And this sounds really basic, but it actually is very important as we get in. So it's a piece of paper, and typically in the corner here, you've got something about your company. And then you've got this thing here that you say, and this is your customers writing this to you, right? So they say pay to the order of, and they'll put your company name or what they think your company's name is. And then they'll put they'll handwrite the dollar amount. They'll put usually an actual numeric dollars in here. There's this memo, which is extremely important soon. And then they sign their name or signature, and then they put a date here. This thing down here is called a MICR number. That's just something that we'll talk about in a minute as well. And then a check number, which is also kind of important. But just burn this in your brain because it's really important when we talk about the cost of cash again. All right, so paper checks. These things have been around since 1762. Just let that sink in for a little bit. They are paper-based. It's not cash. It's somewhere in the past, I don't know, a couple of decades, we came out with MICR, which is these numbers. It stands for like magnetic ink character recognition or something. And basically it's the account number, the check number, and I can't remember what the other numbers are, but there's no memo, very important. No dollar amount, just the account number and the check number. A typical process, if you're running a company, your customers are paying a check, if you're a small business, they're going to send you in the mail an envelope with one of these things in it. And if you're lucky, it's the contents printed out. If you're not lucky, they got a pen and then they like hand wrote the stuff and you have to kind of squint and make sure you know what it is. Some paper or some companies, some of you will have this little device that you plug into your USB. You paid a lot of money to your bank to get it, and you'll run the check through and it goes, wait, wait, and it reads this MICR number. And then you key into the bank, you know, how much money it was, and you can do deposits right on your desktop. If you're most basic, you will get these checks, you'll flip it over, you'll have like a rubber stamp or something and go, ka-chunk, yes, this is ours. And then you'll like literally drive to the bank and then send these over and do a deposit from the bank. So talking about cost of cash, this is really manually intensive. Like you're dealing with paper, you're reading stuff on the paper to figure out what they're saying. There's a lot of manual cost here. So you start thinking, you know, if you're the CEO or the CFO, you know, you're thinking about how much do I pay this person to do this? And then how much is that check? If it's a $5 check and you're paying this person like, you know, much more than $5 an hour, like how much is the time to cost to do that, to process a check manually? So paper checks are not scalable. I can tell you from having gone through audits multiple times, no auditor likes these things. If you have people on staff that are manually touching paper checks and keying stuff in manually, just the auditors don't like that. It's going to increase your days sales outstanding because there's a lot of time lag. You know, this piece of paper floats through the postal mail, and then your AR department, they dread having to, you know, process these. So not super great. It's handwritten content, and most importantly, only this memo field has any kind of identifying purpose for the check, which will come in shortly later here. Okay, so that's checks. Lockbox. So we had companies who were like, this is overwhelming. I got one AR person, I got a zillion checks, I can't deal with this. So banks decided they'd offer a service. They said like, hey, just send the checks to us, we'll take care of it. And we'll automatically deposit the checks in the bank, and we will give you we'll automatically deposit the bank, and we'll give you reports that you can use to figure out like what happened. So that's great. That is Lockbox. So if anybody's not used Lockbox, that's what it is. It's a service often by your bank. You have to pay for that service. But they just take care of all the paper stuff. So what they wind up giving you is a PO box that you then give to your customers, and you tell your customers, hey, if he's paying by check, just send it to this magic PO box and everything, just, you don't have to deal with all the paper stuff. So the bank then does what you used to do normally. They will open the envelope, they'll scan it, they'll validate that everything looks right, they'll deposit it. Oftentimes they will scan in the images into PDFs. They run it through OCR, which stands for optical character recognition. And then they'll create these things. Many times they'll create these things called BAI2 files, which is basically a report that you can use to pull in the details of what was on that check. So the considerations here is, you know, you're paying fees now for the lockbox service. So you got to do the math to figure out, is the lockbox more expensive or less expensive than having your AR person do it? At some point, it'll be much less expensive. You don't have to deal with audit concerns as much because the bank has to deal with that, right? So your people aren't touching paper checks. If you use Lockbox, you're still dealing with days sales outstanding because your customers are using the postal mail to send it to the bank. And you have this problem of your customer sending everything to the lockbox. So then, you get that whole phenomenon of, well, I sent that. Didn't you get it? No, I didn't get it. And you pull a lockbox report like, why is this termination email in the bank or in the lockbox, that kind of stuff. And then this one's really important is automations needed for bank to book. So NetSuite doesn't really have, well, I guess, Dana, I think you said that there might be in there, but the longest time NetSuite has not had a native bank to book, whereas I want to pull this BAI2 file from the bank and just create a bunch of customer payment records in NetSuite. A little bit more on that actually next here. Well, not quite next. So checks, I think Dana or Cory, I think Dana, you had a very similar screen here. If you want to, in your books, create a payment of type check, you would create a payment method of type check. And this undeposited funds is really important. This is a strategy thing. You have to just figure out how you want to strategically do it. If you deposit to and pick a bank account, then it will just post to the GL immediately when you make a customer payment with a check. If you use undeposited funds, then it will post the undeposited funds, and you got to do a deposit record to then actually post to your cash GL. Again, it's a philosophy thing. Some people might say, like, the cash isn't in the bank. I don't want to book it in the bank until I know it's in the bank, in which case you probably want to use undeposited funds. But if you're like, yeah, it'll show up in the bank, it always does, then you just want to use this deposit straight to account. So some summary on checks and lockbox. So you're talking about postal mail, higher DSO. This is really big, lower payment accuracy, guys. The checks, there's a single line on it called memo, and people handwrite stuff on there. So when you want to match the check to an actual invoice, that memo is your key. If the customer doesn't write an invoice, if they don't write a customer number, if they it is very, with checks and lockbox, which is just a super fast way of processing checks, you have the same problem. I've got this check, I don't know who gave me this money, which then costs you money. So checks are challenging there. As your business grows, I can almost promise you will transition from having checks sent to your business to having checks sent to lockbox. You just won't have the time. The cost, it will be a lot cheaper to have your bank just do a lockbox for you. Reconciliation, who sent this check, is, I don't care who you use for your lockbox, for your check processing, for whatever, this is a problem. It is not a technology problem. It is did your customers write their invoice number or their customer number on the check? What you can do to help here is make sure that your customer numbers and invoice numbers that you use in your business are differentiatable. So if you just see a random number, you should not be able to say, like, is that a customer number or an invoice number? You should instantly know based on how you number your checks or your customer numbers and invoices. That is one lesson learned that I would recommend. Bank statement, one-liner versus, yeah. So in your bank statements, you will receive a one-liner that says, hey, congratulations, you got, I don't know, $6,000 in checks from Lockbox today. But you're going to need to know when you do your reconciliation, okay, well, $6,000, but what were the checks? And that detail of the 6,000 comes in these Lockbox BAI details. Again, there are definitely third-party vendors out there who can pull the BAI files, process them, and such. There's a lot of vendors who do it, but if you get frustrated by the accuracy, that's not necessarily a vendor problem. That is your customers aren't writing memos or they're scribbling them in handwriting. If you do Lockbox, that is also a good time to look at these third-party like bank to book, reconciliation and automatic creation of customer payment records. That's another key. Here's a couple of NetSuite resources that I found around checks. So NSF is insufficient funds. So that's another thing with your days sales outstanding, is that customer could write a check and at that time they had money in the bank, but by the time you process it, the money's not in their bank and you get what's called NSF, or it formerly used to be known as bounce checks. But NetSuite has a kind of a process for dealing with that there. All right, I'm going to go on. I think I'm running a little late here. So we're going to talk about ACH. This is what an actual ACH file looks like, by the way. ACH, that stands for Automated Clearinghouse. So checks started in the 1700s, and at some point in the 1970s, maybe 1960s, banks got together and they were like, God, we just need a more efficient way to move money because checks are really manually intensive. So they came up with this concept of automated clearinghouse. So what happened is the banks got together in a group. They formed this nonprofit group called NACHA. And I don't know. Oh, yeah, National Automated Clearinghouse Association. So they all got together, formed this nonprofit, and said, how do we talk to each other in an electronic way to transfer, to do what basically a check does? And the answer was ACH transactions. So this came out about 1970s. It's important to note that they were trying to solve a faster check. So NACHA came about, they made the specification. There's a bunch of banks that got together, and then NACHA doesn't actually run the computer systems. Interestingly, the computer systems that transfers all this stuff is the Federal Reserve. If y'all were watching the news, you would see a number of banks had issues with deposits and things like that just a couple of days ago, and it was because the one of these computers went down. So the Federal Reserve runs the computer systems, which is also why ACH is typically just US. I think you can do some Canada in there as well. All right, so we're going to talk about two different kinds of ACH. ACH EFT you're going to see in NetSuite. So EFT stands for Electronic Funds Transfer. The typical process there is your customer logs into their bank and they push money to your bank. And why this is important is that when the user interface that your customer sees could be, you know, you can't control this. It might give them the ability to put a memo in. It might not. That's problematic because you get, again, this whole problem of whose money is this? Why are you paying me? So ACH EFT is where your customer pushes money to you from their bank to your bank. Consideration with all EFT or all ACHs, you could have a 3-day delay due to the Federal Reserve. I say could have. There's now a lot of same-day funding kind of things, especially if you use third parties, they do that. But if you're just doing pure, I just want to talk to the bank and not have the third party on top of everything, you could have a 3-day delay. This who sent the EFT is challenging. We deal with this at Vertafore all the time, where we get people who push money to us and we have no idea whose money it is, because when they pushed into their bank, they didn't have the ability to put a memo in. And this is all bank dependent. So just be aware with ACH EFT, you could have issues with knowing who pushed you money. ACH direct debit. So this is where you go to your bank and you ask your bank, hey, please pull money from this other person's bank account and put it into my bank account, which sounds preposterous, but that is what it is. And yes, that can happen, which is why you want to protect your bank account numbers. So that's called ACH direct debit. When that happens, your bank goes to their bank and the customer's bank says, okay, do I trust that you can just pull money out of my account? And depending on their bank setup, they may have to do this company ID authorization. Some banks are just open and authorize everything. I think a lot of them don't, and have this company ID authorization thing. Once that authorization happens, then the banks talk to each other and money shows up in your account. So a couple things for this. One great thing about ACH direct debit is this is the first thing that allows you to automate payments. So like you had somebody and you just want to, they just pull money from me every month. I want to think about it, right? That's ACH direct debit. you have to consider as the vendor that your customers, every single one of them who do direct debit, they might have to talk to their bank to do this company ID authorization. So that's probably a phone call with your AR people and their AP people. And, you know, it depends on how familiar they are with that. So direct debit is really good once you get it set up. The fees are fairly low, actually. And you're talking to your bank. So it's great once you get it set up, but getting it set up is a little tricky, to be honest. You're using NACHA files to do it. And yeah, that is an option with ACH. All right, sorry to rush, but I'm trying to hopefully, and Cory, keep me honest if I'm going taking too much time here. So ACH and NetSuite, you can integrate with your bank. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail here. It's NetSuite has the electronic bank payments SuiteApp or bundle. That is what we're using at Vertafore. It has good and bad to it. You do need an additional license to use electronic bank payments. Again, ACH direct debit is possible to do this auto pay or scheduled pay thing, which is kind of a big deal. EFTs are, again, where customers push to you. So it's like a really fast lockbox, if you want to think of it that way. But you now have the challenge of your bank to book, like nothing's showing up in your book. So you're going to have to go and create a payment where your payment method is of type. So I was saying here, like you set one up of type offline. There's ways to automate this, but that's involved. We're not going to get to it in this conversation. But think of ACH EFT as just like lockbox in a way, and ACH direct debit as, again, the ability to do like that auto draft where you're pulling from them. And yes, you can integrate your NetSuite to the bank. That's probably the most important part for them. Okay, so summary on ACH, been around since the 70s. It's just a faster version of checks. Think of it that way. ACH, by the way, also has a memo. There is, I think the banks now have the ability to put a customer number field in, and possibly I think it depends on the bank, well, actually the NACHA specs is just basically a memo. So again, very important, if you're not doing this, when you create invoices, make sure your invoice numbers and your customer numbers can be easily identified. Because if they're just random numbers and you don't know if it's an invoice number or a journal number or this number or that number, it makes processing of these automated ACHs and checks more challenging. So that is something you should do. So with ACH, again, just a faster version of checks. Funds could take 3 days because of the Fed. You're typically using, I'm going to throw this term out there, if you're working with vendors or the bank, you typically use SFTP to transmit these NACHA files to the bank. So the NACHA file is a text file. I gave an example in the screenshot above. SFTP is supported by NetSuite natively. The NetSuite, I think there's some SuiteApps down here that actually support creating NACHA files. Yeah, it's pretty technical to create these, but if you get this set up, then the advantage with your ACH is you're dealing with low fees, right? So your cost of cash is upfront and then not as much recurring. Let's see. Your bank probably will also create natural response files. So if you push files to the bank, for instance, with direct debit, your bank can come back and say, here's how that direct debit went. That's good. Identifying who and why the ACH, especially EFTs, can be dicey because there's only a memo field. ACH direct debit is great because you already know who you're debiting and you know why you're debiting. So bank to book matching is really easy with ACH direct debit. Okay. And then the bank to book automations, you're going to need some way to create NACHA files and SFTP them to your bank, basically. All right, and here's some extra resources on NetSuite integrating NetSuite that I found related to ACH. Okay, how am I doing on time, Cory? I think I'm doing okay so far.
Yeah, you're okay. We have, if we go a little bit over 11, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Last thing I'll talk about is credit cards. I think this is the one we are all most familiar with. So not going to talk, well, yeah, hopefully nothing too much here. So credit cards, they're simple, they're electronic, but as we all know, credit cards have probably the highest fee structure to them, right? And as I really worked through this talk, I realized how there's this evolution. You had like, in the very beginning, you had gold coins, and then you had like paper that represented the gold coin, and then you had a check, which was paper that you just write a number on, and then it represented as many gold coins as you wanted. And then you went into ACH, which was like a faster check. And then credit cards came along because the one common theme of all these payments in the past is you don't know who's paying you or why they're paying you. And credit cards kind of added extra layers of information there where you could figure out like, well, who's paying me? Oh, okay. But as the information got richer, the fees get higher too. So anyways, easy to use, very ubiquitous are credit cards, but you're going to have higher fees. So you've got these structures here, like the gateway, which is basically the computers that you talk to, the processor, which is the other end of the gateway, like it receives your request for the transaction and figures out like who I route this thing to. And then you got the bank, the card brand, who is the actual credit card bank in the back. Purchase cards, some of you might see, some of you might not. This is something I think NetSuite does a really good job of, by the way. So purchase cards look and feel a lot like a credit card. They have a number and a name, but they're different in the back in that purchase cards like really go in and start sending very detailed information. So there's this level 2 and level 3 concept. So like level 2 is where when you make basically when you're paying, you will also send like, well, how much of this amount that I'm paying is just tax or just the subtotal? And that alone is really helpful. You think about from an electronic reporting standpoint. Level 3, you go in even more detail. You're like paying by the line level. So like there's SKUs and things like that. So purchase cards are really helpful for companies to electronically reconcile what you're paying for, basically. But to implement purchase cards, you, the vendor, must be able to provide this kind of data to the payment processor. And again, where NetSuite's made this really good, there's literally like a checkbox. I think it's on a screenshot I've got coming up here that you check that says send line level data. And that's kind of like it. Like it's like, that's kind of great. So anyways, purchase cards are a thing. You, the vendor, have to do extra things to support purchase cards. These are going to have very low processing fees because you're sending a lot of data. Credit card security, you can't talk about credit cards without security. If you deal with credit cards, you might, you've probably heard of PCI DSS, and you might have to do a SAQ, which stands for a self-assessment questionnaire. The card brands actually require that you do an SAQ every year, but whether you're doing them or not, well, it depends on your bank. Actually, it depends on who's accepting your credit cards. If you're doing SAQs, you will always be asked whether you're compliant, and your answer is always something like, I use NetSuite. I think it's compliant, should be. Go here, go to help and search payment card number, security, and compliance. And this is where you can screenshot where it says NetSuite is a level 1 PCI compliant, blah, 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 and send that to your auditors and move on down the road. All right. Minimizing fees. So philosophically with credit cards, the thing to think about, if you want lower fees, you've got to lower fraud risk. The fees are higher if your fraud risk is higher. And a couple of things I've seen over the years, there's a type of credit card transaction called MOTO, which stands for mail order, telephone order. These are the highest fraud risk you can get. So this is where, a customer calls you on the phone and you ask them to read off the credit card number and the name and the, you ask to read in this stuff and you punch it into a computer somewhere and key it in. Those are typically classified as MOTO, and those are going to have your highest fees because they're the highest risk. Because you got a human being who now knows all this sensitive information and they could go, write it on a piece of paper and take it home. The other thing about minimizing fees, this is like a one-liner, but it's kind of a thing, is ask your processor, like, hey, what are these fees? What do I need to do to lower them? Sometimes you might be surprised. Sometimes they're just configuration settings that you haven't turned on, such as sending address verification or setting up address verification, that will lower your fees dramatically just because you ask. So if you're getting a lot of high credit card processing fees, ask your processor, do an audit every couple years at least, of just like, why are we paying all this? Like, what do we need to do to make the fees get lower? And then the note about credit card expiration dates, this used to be like a really big deal. The card's expired and then you run it and it didn't work. And then you got in this world of like Amex didn't seem to care. And now nobody seems to care. You see now that there's like functionality, and I think NetSuite even has this functionality where it just assumes that the card's been renewed. So the card expiration dates are, they're not as important as they used to be. I think that's the theme there. Which payment processors does Gateway or does NetSuite support? Go to page:"new payment processing profile, and here's all the ones that are just built into built into NetSuite. So these are not the third parties that you'd see. These are just the kind of like, there's a merchant ER sponsor here. So these are the guys that like are going to be the easiest, quite frankly, to integrate NetSuite in for credit cards into NetSuite. All right, here's an example. If you picked one of those CyberSource at the time, so here's your support line level data. Click, okay, I got level 2 and level 3. It's kind of great. This merchant ID, security key, this is all just for setting up, for the gateway to know who you are. So this, you'll work with the gateway to set this up. It's a one-time thing. It's not terribly difficult. And you can tie in NetSuite, you can tie your bank account to the credit card processors, which is great for booking the payments. It's, the bank versus book thing gets a lot easier with credit cards. Okay, summary of credit cards. NetSuite has a much better job of supporting native integration with a number of processors. I really like their support for purchase level 2 and purchase level 3, which gives you, the vendor, a lower interchange or lower fee structure if your customer is using purchase cards. Credit card fees are a thing. Reduce your risk. Ask your processor why these fees are happening and have conversations around how to lower them, because you could, there's things you could be doing in NetSuite that could help lower them. Customer payments via credit card are really well integrated in NetSuite. I know I didn't walk through any of that here, but they're just nicely done as far as like, you take a payment, you pick credit card, you click save, and boom, it hits the card. It's like that kind of experience. And bank to book reconciliation is way more straightforward than Lockbox and ACH because of this integration being so nice. And ACH and Lockbox, you're just dealing with a memo that maybe there's something in the memo. Here's some NetSuite resources, some help and user guides. There's a whole user guide around payments and payment processing that I recommend in this whole talk about ACH, checks, and credit cards. There's also this chargeback SuiteApp. So chargebacks are just where a customer basically goes to their bank and says, no, I didn't make that payment. Give me my money back. And then the bank basically hits you with this thing called a chargeback, and there's a whole dispute process. So NetSuite does have a SuiteApp for identifying chargebacks and putting those in front of you. So just be aware that exists. So if chargebacks are a thing for you, be aware it exists and take a look at it. All right, that is a quick sweep through of checks, Lockbox, ACH, and credit cards. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So if there's any follow-up questions for Mike, please feel free to post them in the chat window. We'll try and get to those questions, maybe in our open forum section. So I'm going to keep moving here. At the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to give a SuiteWorld recap. Both Dana Larson and myself were fortunate to be able to attend SuiteWorld this year. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I just have a little bit of a recap and some things, my observations and whatnot from our SuiteWorld trip. First of all, I just wanted to mention, so there's this thing that NetSuite does every year called the NetSuite Hackathon for Good. This is usually on the Monday before the event. This year, the Hackathon for Good was to help an organization called the Capital Area Food Bank to help them improve the use of their SuiteCommerce Advanced so that they can deliver more food to the needy. And so this year, I decided to participate in the Hackathon for Good, and I bamboozled Dana into doing it with me as well. So that was a lot of fun. This is our Hackathon team. So we have Steve and Adam. And if you've heard of the tool called Suite Advanced, the Chrome plugin, Adam is the mastermind behind the Suite Advanced plugin. And he's a lot taller in person than I expected. Kim is my business partner, and then obviously Sweet Stanley here in the middle. There's me, Dana, and then Sean and Ben. So we were a team of 7, and we put our heads together to try and solve the challenges that the Capital Area Food Bank had for us. And crazy thing happened. We won the Hackathon for Good. Our team name is Sweet Hackers, and they posted our photo up in the one of the keynote sessions, and it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. I definitely want to do it again if I can. And then as a team, we are from lots of different companies. As a team, though, we've decided to also implement the solution that we came up with. We're going to implement it pro bono for the Capital Area Food Bank. So we have 4 developers on our team and some business process experts, and we're going to help them make their processes better. So that was the beginning of our SuiteWorld. And then, so I'm going to move on and talk about some of the really cool things that I thought about at SuiteWorld. And so basically, there's 2 words that really stick in my mind from everything that I saw at SuiteWorld, and that is artificial intelligence. Many of the keynote sessions were around the different things that NetSuite is doing with AI. And it was interesting because I read an article that NetSuite sent out like the day before SuiteWorld, and it was about AI and how they're using it. And I read the article and I was like, wow, it really doesn't seem like they're embracing it very much. Like the article just left me like, okay, well, I think you probably need to get on the bus a little bit more, NetSuite, but they came out in a big way. And so they're doing a lot of really cool things with AI. So a lot of these features, they may be available now, but some of them are going to be available within the next 12 months. So these are things that NetSuite says they're going to come out with, but if you've been in the NetSuite ecosystem for a while, you know that when they say something may come out, it may not come out, or it may come out, 2 years down the road or whatever. So I'll just talk about some of the things that I thought were really cool. So this one is, I think, probably one of the biggest AI things that they talked about, and they demonstrated it in depth. So it's called generative AI text. And so the generative AI powered capabilities help users create contextual and personalized content for any text area in NetSuite based on a few starter words that describe intent. Uses will include benefits in HR, finance and accounting, supply chain, and operations. NetSuite has partnered with a company called Cohere. Cohere is an enterprise level, basically think ChatGPT, but they only do enterprise level work with enterprise level companies. And so Cohere is the AI system behind all of the stuff that NetSuite is doing around AI. So one example of this generative AI text is, and one example that they put on the that they showed on the screen was they went to an item record, and there's a little a generative text button next to like the product description field. And so then they would click that generative AI and it would create this description of that product dynamically based on some of the other input fields on that item record. So like the brand name, the product number, and then maybe if you had any details like length, width, height, weight, stuff like that. It can use those fields and reference those and then generate a description dynamically by clicking this little button. And so they say they're going to be able to use this generative AI text in a lot of different areas in NetSuite. So item records, writing explanations for reporting, and then maybe like collections, email generation, generating text and emails and stuff like that. If you've used ChatGPT or heard anything about it, you can go to ChatGPT and you can say, write me a description, write a description for this job, and ChatGPT will just plop out a whole bunch of information, like a whole description, and they're usually like pretty good for whatever you ask it to do. So think about that in relation to doing these types of things in NetSuite. I think it's going to be pretty cool, pretty powerful. Another place that they're using AI is in their bill capture. So they have new AI-powered capabilities to intelligently capture and categorize expenses based on historical data. So they'll do like invoice scanning, automated PO matching, approval routing, and all of that's going to be AI-powered to help basically streamline processes, remove manual clicks of people having to do the same repetitive tasks over and over in NetSuite. They're going to use AI to help automate a lot of that stuff. Another thing that they're that they're plugging AI into is their planning and budgeting. So they're also known as NSPB, helps organizations automate data analysis to improve and accelerate decision making, predictive algorithms that continually monitor and analyze plans, forecasts, and variances. I think that this is a really significant area that AI can help, where you can look at forecasting, and AI can just analyze all of this data very, very quickly, and show you trends and forecasts and all that stuff. So I think that that's also a really good, cool place for it. NetSuite Analytics Warehouse, AI-powered capabilities in NetSuite Analytics Warehouse consolidate and centralize data from a multitude of sources. Help you accelerate access to data visualizations and reporting. So they're applying it to the NSAW, or NetSuite Analytics Warehouse. I hope that we can do a presentation on NSAW at some point next year. I think it's an important feature that NetSuite's really putting a lot of effort behind, that NetSuite users should know about and should know as an option out there. The last one that I want to talk about, this was kind of like blew my mind, and this one is not like officially announced, but they showed this demo slide, or this demo video of it, and basically they showed somebody in the SuiteCloud IDE like generating a script, and there was a text prompt. So if you think about like ChatGPT, you can go there and you can say, in NetSuite, write a SuiteScript 2.0 script to automate such and such process, and ChatGPT will actually write a script to do that. And you can take that script, you can plug it into NetSuite, and it will work. I mean, you have to know what you're doing when you're deploying a script, and you have to be able to look at the internal IDs and stuff like that. But you can do that same kind of thing, and then they demonstrated this inside the IDE environment, where you can say, write a script to do such and such, and then it's automatically generating the code, and then so it's gonna speed up development time. It's also going to make maybe customize or scripting available to folks who may not be developers. And I think that this is really cool. But this is not something that they announced, but they just kind of like breezed over it really quickly. But I can see it coming. And I've actually been using like ChatGPT for a while now to either read a script and tell me what it does, or to generate a little script. And I've done some testing and put it in there. I also attended a session at NetSuite or at SuiteWorld where they had an end user who did the same thing. He used ChatGPT, and then he talked about how we took that script and put it into NetSuite. But then they also had a NetSuite developer, kind of tell you about best practices. If you're going to use that method of creating scripting in NetSuite, there's some best practices to follow. And that they say that conversation is going to be in SuiteAnswers, or be available in SuiteAnswers at some point. But that was really interesting to me. So I think that this AI and scripting it's not replacing developers. I think it's ultimately going to make developers more efficient. And and be able to do things a little bit faster. So anyway, so that's the end of my thoughts on SuiteWorld. Dana Larson was also there with me. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana so that she can give you her thoughts on SuiteWorld. Uh-oh.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
So can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. So I took some of their announcements and just put them on the slides. I'm not going to talk through everything, but I wanted it to be out there for future reference. So if you want to look at the slides later. Oh, and I should mention the hackathon, because yes, Cory did encourage me. He said he was doing it. I thought, oh, well, that might be good. But I never thought about doing it before, because when I think hackathon, I think coder. And so I wanted to let everybody know I am not that technical, and it was still fun to be part of it, because they need business process. They need, it's not all coding. And so it was a lot of fun. So I encourage you to maybe try it sometime. So they, like you said, there were things they announced that were available now or coming possibly in the next 12 months. So I put them in green if they have them now. And NetSuite Capital, if I understand it right, and I haven't dug into all of these yet, it's NetSuite loaning you money based on your outstanding receivables. And so you can say, hey, I want to get this cash now. And NetSuite funds it, or whoever they are working with funds it, and then you pay it back when you get paid from the customer. And so that's interesting. The next one is the most interesting to me, the NetSuite transaction line distribution. And I've done a little bit of digging on it. And essentially what it is when you're paying a bill and you want to distribute it across multiple subsidiaries, but yet you have the bill in one subsidiary. And so for some of my clients, we've created scripts to create those journals in the background, because it's a common issue. And so now they've come out with it, and it has some limitations right now. It's only on vendor bills and vendor credits. From what I read, it looks like you attach it at the vendor level. You set up a template to say, this is how I want this split. You can split a bill on the fly, but you click a button. It's like a quick split or something like that, and you can tell it where to go. You have to use the intercompany setup. So those intercompany represent subsidiary and all that. So it looks like it might be a heavy lift to set it up. But then once it's in, it looks like it'll do what we need it to do as far as allocating costs that you pay from one subsidiary into other ones. Then, let me get to my screen. These are coming in the next 12 months. And the first one was kind of what they highlighted, which was this enterprise performance management. But I believe it's a set of solutions, and most of them Cory went over with the AI stuff. So it was kind of weird the way they put it out there. It's not really clear exactly what it is, but there are some articles out there for it. And then the digital payment solution, receiving payments. So it looks like it's going to be more like what we talked about today, and electronic invoicing. And then the benchmark 360, that was interesting, because you'll be able to opt in for your metrics. And so you can have your day sales outstanding go into the pie, and then you can look at it and say, how do I measure against other companies that are like me? What should I be doing better? And so I love that idea, to be able to see across the universe, to know, the universe of NetSuite anyway, to know how am I doing. And I thought that could be really fun to look at. Suite Commerce, my account, and then that's just adding it to the UK, and then the CPQ subscription option. So those are out now. Field service management is coming in the next 12 months, which could be very helpful for some people. I wish I could remember, and if you guys remember, which was it, like Technics or something?
Next Technique.
Next, thank you. They are using that field service management and incorporating it into NetSuite, and so that could be very helpful. Best for last, task-specific licenses. So they're starting that out with a WMS user license that only allows for receiving, put away, picking, shipping. But they're going to expand that into other areas. So my take on that was, it might be available now. I can't really tell, or soon, but they're starting with WMS. But that bodes well for other areas in the system where you've got very task specific and you don't want to pay for a full license. And so, did they say, Cory, were they going to pack those in 5 like the other ones, or were they going to be individual?
I don't recall. My impression was they were going to be just individual licenses, but just like discounted or something.
Yeah. And so I think that could be really helpful for the pricing. And then save the date. Next year, it's in September. Usually they, have it the same week every year. They moved it from May to October, but now they're moving to September, and it's coinciding with Oracle's Cloud World. So that'll be super interesting to see how much of it will be part of Oracle's Cloud World, or if it's just coincidental. I doubt it's coincidental, but no one has said that, oh, we're getting absorbed into Cloud World. If I have it right, weren't there like 14,000 people there? And I know Oracle's Cloud World has to be bigger than that. So it's super interesting to see how they're going to manage that. But it was a good time. Hope to see you all there next year.